Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show. The medical marijuana for you and me. Ah, yeah, the medical marijuana. Whoa, 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 ah, yeah, the medical. It's the medical marijuana show. You will know.
I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. Hey, boy, don't feel my world untrue. Yeah, I want to talk to you. My world can be true if you do what I tell you to. I want to talk to you.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome once again to Medical Marijuana Radio. This edition is for Saturday, the 26th of September, 2015. I'm your host, Larry Love. We're here every week to bring you the latest information on medical marijuana, adult use, recreational, from all over the globe. This week we have a great interview, a great guest. We're going to do away with the commercials. We have Barry Gainsburg from New York and Florida. He's going to tell us all about what's going on in those two states, along with what's happening on the federal level. He's an attorney. He's a consultant. He knows a lot of stuff. We'll talk about California. We're going to do the whole gamut. But as always, first I have news for you, and we're going to be covering news in all kinds of states today. So here we go.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, and first up, this comes from Providence, Rhode Island, from the GoLocalProvidence.com. Are medical marijuana centers gouging patients? And this is today, Saturday, September 26th, written by Kate Nagel. Members of the medical marijuana community are questioning what they say are high prices and limited supply at the state's 3 medical marijuana compassion centers. Are they blasting the state for no legislative oversight of the facilities as mandated by law? Recently, I've been getting a lot of complaints from patients about what's going on at the compassion center, said Bill Cotton, who founded the B&B Medical Marijuana Evaluation Center. I had a patient call and tell me that centers are charging $240 for a half ounce and will only sell in grams or eighths. The average price of a caregiver is $200 an ounce. At the Compassion Center, it's $350 to $400 an ounce. The Compassion Centers are saying that caregivers are charging them too much, said Cotton. You'd think there would be enough on the shelves. 60% of the patients that I see are on Social Security. These Compassion Centers are supposed to be helping the most in need. Cotton noted that the enabling legislation called for a legislative oversight committee, which he says hasn't met. Sounds like the people running that program aren't doing their jobs either. So he goes on to say, so we get the complaints like this. Who do we complain to? They block the oversight committee, said Cotton. What the state needs is not to limit the amount of compassion centers so that the prices can come down and have some more variety. So it sounds like this is sort of happening all over in this medical industry that we have. Let's see, next up. We've made a lot of headway. President Obama has been wishy-washy at times, but we have made a lot of headway on certain areas. One of them is it is a little bit better now than it was 8 years ago, of course, with medical cannabis. Now here is a bill to take the option to shutting down the legal pot sales and taking it away from any future president. So let's say President Obama, gives us, the Schedule 1, takes it off Schedule 1. He's been helping us all along. This is a bill to protect us from whoever the next president is from turning things backwards, like a President Christie or Rubio or any of those Republicans would do.
Colorado's marijuana growers and sellers have been allowed to operate by the Obama administration, but that may not go on forever.
The threat of adverse federal action remains, especially if a future president to this one approaches marijuana issues differently.
Democratic Congresswoman Diana DeGette says she wants to take the option of shutting down legal pot sales away from any future president, and once again she'll have bipartisan sponsorship. Republican Congressman Mike Kaufman's office told 9 News he's on board with her bill, which would give states like Colorado a waiver from the Controlled Substances Act as it relates to pot.
And the marijuana that kids are smoking today is not the same as the marijuana that Jeb Bush smoked 40 years ago.
Pot popped up at the Republican presidential debate and continued to prove an issue that can easily divide people who agree on other things. Chris Christie says he'd use federal authority to shut down legal pot sales.
Look at the decrease in productivity. Look at the way people get used and move on to other drugs when they use marijuana as a gateway drug.
I would let Colorado do what the 10th Amendment says.
Rand Paul cast pot as a states' rights issue, and Jeb Bush agreed.
What goes on in Colorado, as far as I'm concerned, that should be a state decision.
Democrats are still staking out their positions. We may learn more in their first debate next month. As for DeGette's bill, she says it's a carbon copy of the one she ran last year, which never got a hearing.
We think that as more states are moving in this direction, there'll be more and more receptivity from my colleagues on both sides of the aisle.
The question is, after less than 2 years of legal sales, how receptive? Brandon Rittiman, 9 News.
Well, the great experiment is obviously working. There's been actually less car accidents, less suicides, and so forth in states where cannabis is legal. So they can't go that way. But we do need some protection, and hopefully whoever comes in next will be on our side and help our industry move forward with banking and testing and other things like that. Now, speaking of testing, back to this story in Colorado. Pot products were recalled, and one of the pot shops, a dispensary, fired their employee for using unapproved pesticides. Here's this report from Colorado.
New tonight, a pair of Denver pot dispensaries have recalled their products. That's after learning that unapproved pesticides may have been used. CBS 4's Howard Nathan joins us live tonight in Denver. So, Howard, how did this happen?
Well, Tom, this is Sacred Seed behind me, and inside the facility, there is a grow house. Now, the CEO of the company tells me that the employees are only supposed to go inside the grow house and spray pesticides 3 times a week. However, he learned that one of the employees claims he only went inside once and used pesticides that are not approved by the state. He pulled his pot.
This is just one box of several.
Worth several thousands of dollars for more product safety testing. A sample from Sacred Seed tested positive for residues of 3 pesticides the state says cannot be used legally on marijuana. A Denver City County Health Department employee explains what's behind the recall.
It's very likely that there is not an acute reaction because we don't see people going to the hospital every day. However, we really don't have any idea about what the long-term impacts might be through repetitive use. Denver Recreational and Sacred Seed voluntarily recalled their marijuana products for further testing.
What you're looking at is a shelf that has 4 strains of cannabis on it, and we normally have roughly 40 strains of cannabis. So we pulled 90% of the product off the shelf.
What happened to his pot? Jeremy Kilborn of Sacred Seed says an employee took a shortcut and used the wrong pesticides.
I would have never hired the guy had I known this was going to happen, but we had no reason to believe that this was something he was capable of.
James Monaco of Denrec in Lodo offered no explanation. He told me he's working with the city and state to find out how the wrong pesticides infiltrated his products. But what happened to that Sacred Seed employee who knowingly violated company guidelines?
He lost his job.
Now, both of those marijuana shops hope to get the all clear on Monday or so. In the meantime, if you think you got some product that might not be 100% correct, return them to the stores. In the meantime, this all may be a moot point come early next year when mandatory routine testing takes place for all marijuana products. Reporting live in Denver, Howard Nathan, CBS 4 News.
So hopefully the mandatory testing will be mandatory and will be enforced. We're hoping that that will happen here in New Mexico as well. We don't want problems with heavy metals and pesticides and so forth. Nobody wants that in any, if it's medical or recreational. It's not good for the body. To continue on this unfortunate bad news, so to speak, here's a woman in Colorado who has a little side business selling marijuana edibles and going around licensing. So is this stuff safe? And here's this story from Colorado as well.
Since the legalization of marijuana, edibles have become a concern. People have died. Children have gone to emergency rooms after mistaking them for candy. And while the state has gone to great lengths to regulate edibles, CBS 4 investigator Rick Saunders shows how some are bypassing the system.
Nice to meet you. So tell me what you got.
At the precise time arranged, our contact showed up with the marijuana-infused edibles. The company calls itself Martha Stoner. From its website, it may look legit, but under Colorado law, it's certainly not.
So this is the Magically Delicious bar, and then the brownie is in there, and then I gave you a free hard candy.
The Martha Stoner Facebook page shows off what appears to be delicious-looking candies, expertly decorated confections, and more, all laced with marijuana.
The bar is at least 100 milligrams. The brownie is a little bit more, probably like 110, 120.
Okay.
And then the candies, one candy, you're looking about 20 milligrams.
So it'll get me rocking and rolling.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
The state regulations are 10 milligrams of THC per serving. Committees have been meeting to tighten regulations, including markings to keep edibles out of the hands of children. Wana Brands is one of the companies participating and is concerned about the sales of homemade edibles on the black market.
There's no way for anybody to know what the potency is of those products or how carefully they've been made.
And you make them at your house, or what?
do.
You just have a home kitchen?
I do.
And she is far from alone. We found numerous examples of homemade edibles for sale on the internet.
The black market often produces higher quality than the regulated market, that the potency levels are not restricted as they are in recreational, that the pricing is often much more affordable.
How much for
$27?
The price, $27. But instead of buying, I walked in.
Hi, I'm Rick Salinger from Channel 4. Can you explain to me how what you're doing is legal? Do you have a license from the state to sell marijuana edibles?
Apparently, she wasn't in a position to talk. In fact, our repeated attempts to follow up with her failed to reach her. The owner of this licensed, regulated edibles company offered some advice.
Stop. If you want to get into this business, do it in a legal, regulated way and make your product safe for the public.
What exactly is Martha Stoner?
We didn't even get a goodbye. Rick Salinger, CBS 4 News.
And when Rick tried to reach Martha Stoner, he found the web page was gone and the phone since disconnected.
Imagine that.
So there was a little bit of a reefer madness at the front of that piece where they were mentioning that people have died from overdoses of edibles. Of course, that's not true. So you always have to worry about who's writing these pieces. They sometimes have their own personal agenda, so we know that no one's died from cannabis overdose. Anyway, one more on the downside. Here's a Minnesota man who was getting things shipped to him from Oregon, and these people take their chances, and I guess they're going to have to pay their price. It's unfortunate that because he obviously lives in a state that does not have legalization for adult use, and that the medical there is so restrictive, people have to go into the black market and try to import things. Here's this story from Minnesota.
Well, authorities have busted a suspected drug dealer in Golden Valley, intercepting several packages in the mail that were full of marijuana.
It led them to a house on Wally Street where a raid revealed even more drugs and thousands in cash.
Fox 9's Jonathan Cho joining us with more on this investigation. Jonathan?
Yeah, Jeff, undercover officers work with the U.S. Postal Service to set up 36-year-old Jason Goodfollow, who took the bait, and now the fall.
Hop on your bikes, kiddos.
Yes. Tim Downer never thought he'd have to say history.
Very secluded. Everybody pretty much keeps to themselves.
Is the one with the suspected drug dealer.
I may have met him once.
On Monday, the Hennepin County Violent Offender Task Force
They all carry big guns, small guns.
raided this house on the 8900 block of Wally Street.
And they were here for about 2 hours, carried out a few boxes of things.
36-year-old Jason Goodfollow is charged with selling and possessing marijuana.
You talk to those people every day. So it was shocking.
According to the criminal complaint, the United States Postal Inspector intercepted 2 packages last week containing a total of 8 pounds of marijuana and 100 grams of marijuana wax from a sender in Oregon addressed to a J.R. Hetrick. An undercover inspector tried to deliver the packages, but when no one was home, left one of these slips. It was all a setup, and Goodfollow took the bait. He tried to claim the packages at the post office. That's when he was arrested. Investigators searched Goodfollow's house and allegedly found more marijuana, mushrooms, 2 scales, nearly 30 grand in cash, and a cell phone with text messages indicating he was expecting these deliveries. In an interview with police, he denies the packages are his, but admits he owns the pot inside the house.
They've only lived here maybe less than 6 months.
Downer and his neighbors say prior to this, they've never had any problems with Goodfollow. But after all this,
I'm glad it's done. I hope they're gone.
We were unable to reach Goodfollow for comment. He made his initial court appearance this afternoon in Hennepin County. He's out on $20,000 bond. Jeff, back to you.
All right, Jonathan.
So, sending 8 pounds of cannabis through the mail and 100 grams of wax, pretty stupid. But again, we need national legalization, medical, and hopefully someday recreational will be national as well. Because you live in the wrong state, it causes you to do things that can get you in trouble. It's very sad that people still have to go to jail for cannabis, but you do have to take your chances when you're doing something like that. This next story, good news on this side of things. In Oregon next week, recreational will begin, recreational for adults, and here's this report.
And the party dynamic in Oregon could have some big changes on the way with the state's recreational marijuana law going into effect next week.
KEZI 9 News reporter Oscar Maciel is live in Eugene with more on how medical marijuana dispensaries are gearing up for a new way of doing business. Oscar?
The Oregon Health Authority says there are more than 300 medical marijuana dispensaries in Oregon. Emerald City is one of 19 in Eugene that'll start to sell recreational marijuana 1 week from today. As part of Measure 91 passed by voters in 2014, October 1st is the first day the drug can be sold from medicinal dispensaries. Clients are allowed to buy 7 grams of marijuana, a quarter of the legal limit they're allowed by law to carry in public, which is 1 ounce. Costs can vary based on the type of flower. Emerald City says to cater to recreational users and medical patients, it was forced to enhance storage areas. The dispensary says it also created separate stations for the different users. Emerald City says it's using an additional scale certified and calibrated to the specifications of the state. The dispensary says it welcomes Oregon's stance on marijuana, but says it's worried regulation will harm those seeking help.
There may be some kind of sacrifice that's going to be asked of medical cannabis patients. And as they were the litmus test that kind of helped pave the way for where we are now, it seems unjust. Would you grab any jar?
Emerald City says it's concerned the state will eventually tax all cannabis. Starting in January, tax on recreational marijuana will be 25% till the end of next year, when it changes to between 17 and 20%. Emerald City says the details regarding recreational use still need to be ironed out, but it's awaiting new details from the Oregon Liquor Control Commission, and that's set to be released sometime this week. Live in Eugene, Oscar Maciel, KZI 9 News.
So if you're visiting family or friends in Oregon after next week, it is now a new destination for recreational users. And next up, before we play our interview with Barry Gainsburg, here is the Men's Warehouse founder talking about the war on marijuana is the biggest con ever.
Without getting you in trouble, how often do you use, and is it only for medical reasons?
Well, I've been smoking marijuana on a regular basis for about 50 years. As you can see, it's really impacted me in a negative way, and physically and spiritually, I haven't been able to. Financially. So this is all why I say the emperor is not wearing any clothes. This is the biggest con that has been perpetrated on this country in the last century. Right now, cannabis is a Schedule I drug, so it's treated like it were heroin. Everybody who's in high school hears that and goes, what are they talking about? So we have to make that change at the federal level, and then I think the best idea is to just let the states follow the Constitution, and with voter support, using our democracy, decide how they want to treat it in their state. Alabama does not have to have the same rules as California. I think it's important that we protect limited home cultivation without any government licensing. So whether that's one plant or 10 plants, I don't know, but I think that that's very important.
Are there any companies you are investing in or would invest in the cannabis industry?
I've looked at one investment a year or so ago and did not make it. You know, there are still a lot of questions that are raised in terms of dispensaries, the way the IRS does not allow normal business deductions. And so I would say it may be a little premature to invest from my point of view, but obviously you can see at this convention that many people feel otherwise.
So that, again, was the founder of Men's Warehouse. He's been using cannabis for 50 years and is a big advocate for it. And it really, the prohibition of this really is the biggest con ever, as opposed to what the former mayor of New York, what's his name, Bloomberg, said that medical marijuana is the biggest joke of all time. And so people are still against it. People are for it. Make sure that when you go to the polls next year that you read the background on how people will support our industry, which is very important. Okay, we'll be right back with our interview with attorney Barry Gainsburg right after this.
It's all about the 420 MMJ Radio.
Hey, this is Scott from Rare Dangness. You're listening to Medical Marijuana Radio.
And we're back. And online today we have Barry R. Gainsburg, former New Yorker and now Floridian. Barry is providing legal counsel to the cannabis and securities industry. Barry, welcome to Medical Marijuana Radio.
Thank you so much for having me on, Larry. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Well, you know what? We're trying to educate people. This industry, the cannabis industry, is obviously exploding. It's the hottest thing that's happened since the .com era. There's probably a lot of people that need legal counsel, and you're also in the securities industry, so I'm guessing you know a little bit about these penny stocks and how things are going there. So, have you actually been involved, Barry, in helping anybody get a license to grow, or are you in that kind of a legal business as well?
Well, sure. What I like to do is provide counsel, but consulting as well from being in the securities industry. And my skill set very nicely translates right now into the cannabis industry. So it's a very nice marriage of my experience to what I'm really passionate about. And that's providing cannabis and allowing cannabis to be used for people who medically need it, who on a recreational basis want to use it, since it's, I believe, better than alcohol or tobacco, obviously. And there are people who use it for sacramental reasons as well.
Have you visited Colorado or any legal, or Oregon's just starting next week, but have you visited anywhere yet?
Yes, I've been to Colorado. I was there last year, and actually one of the things I do is I consult for a show called the Marijuana Show, which helps find funding for startup cannabis businesses.
Right, that's the two young ladies from Taos in New Mexico. I'm in Santa Fe.
Exactly.
I've had them on my show, and so to tell us a little bit about that. How are things going with that, and where are they at with the show at this point?
Well, right now we're going with season 2. In October, we're going to do some shooting. We have access and distribution. It's going really well. And there's just so much interest because you have the investment community that sees what a great opportunity this is, not only to make a potential return, which capitalism is all about, but also to help people, to help them with medical issues, to help them be educated about, edibles and all the things that go into the cannabis industry. It's not just Cheech and Chong.
Yeah, absolutely. There, I've seen some of the little 20-minute shows, I guess, that they've been doing. So it's sort of, they pitch it as a cross between The Apprentice and Shark Tank, I believe, is their line. And so has anybody made any deals yet and been funded or won any kind of I don't know how the contest really works, but what's happening?
I understand.
That first
well,
season?
at this point, everything is under lockdown for season 2, so there can be no disclosures about that. But again, they put people in touch with investors and they work out their deals and the rest of it. So I know there have been some success stories from last year. So, but they're hoping for many more this year, and it seems they have much more funding available due to the credibility of what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And what they were able to do last year.
Yeah. We had them on the show last year before they started shooting, and it was a good interview. I think both of them are former radio people, and they
Yes, Wendy used to work with Kelly Ripa on something called The Tingler, and Karen is a more of a finance PR person.
Well, let's talk about finance real quick then. You're providing legal advice in the cannabis and securities industry. What's happening with that? I know that right now they're very volatile. These penny stocks, they can go up and down, and it just is now the time for the average person who wants to go into their savings and try to invest and make money. Is it now the time for them, or is this just for speculators?
Yeah, I was going to say, if I had any of my IRA money, I would not touch any of the cannabis stocks right now. This is only meant for anybody, I think, at this point with speculative capital. These stocks aren't trading on the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. They're trading on the OTC and pink sheets and situations like that. And some of them are very good businesses. Again, part of the problem you have is that there's a dichotomy going on right now. There's a legality on the state level. However, on a federal level, and that really is precedent, or the supreme law of the land, still makes it illegal because it's classified as a Schedule I substance, along with LSD and heroin.
Right. Well, then let's talk about that, because you're an attorney, and federally we all know that Schedule I is what's keeping this industry from really expanding, and it's keeping other states from actually having real medical cannabis programs.
Industries.
Yes, there's industries being built. So do you think that, all of a sudden this Rosenberg character, who's the new head of the DEA, says that he doesn't think it should be changed from Schedule I. What a slap in the face that was to hear this week.
It is, and to everybody to hear that. Basically, here's the problem with the Schedule I classification. What it doesn't allow is for research to occur, which really will buttress, and at least a lot of it's been done in Canada and Israel, who's allowed it for a long time. So the research is out there. It's just not American research. So at least that's out there. But it stops banks from providing services to all these operators that actually touch the cannabis, because, again, it's still a federal crime. And although they've given guidance and said we're not going to prosecute as long as you follow certain rules and guidelines, they do it anyhow. So they won't provide any banking services. The DEA, which was defunded from going to prosecute cannabis-related laws, still came in and is still, involved in lawsuits. So that hasn't stopped either. So a lot of the promise on the federal level, you also can't have interstate commerce. So you can't, now you're going to have Washington, which has legal rec, and you're going to have Oregon, which is going to have legal rec. And if you grew one farm, you couldn't transport legally that cannabis across state lines because it's still federally legal.
Well, that's what I tell people, when, Arizona's medical program has reciprocity. If you are a medical cannabis card holder in another state, you can have 2.5 ounces, which is the legal limit for medical patients in Arizona. So let's say, I'm a medical patient here in New Mexico and we border Arizona. But if I was to, go visit family or whatever in Phoenix, I would be fine when I got over to the other side, and I'd be fine on this side. But that just crossing that line would be a federal offense under these conditions. And this is part of what's happening. This is why it's so important to have a federally legal medical cannabis program, because all of these families that have little kids and are sick themselves and need to pick up and move to Colorado or Washington, this is discrimination against people who are ill, and on the federal level things have to be done, and there's not a lot of time left. Obama is only in office for another year. So what do you think can happen in the next year?
Well, here's the good news. I don't think it's all that bad. When you look around and see what the states themselves and what the people are demanding through ballots and initiatives, and even the legislatures in some places are recognizing this. They're moving forward with stuff. Now, to some extent, some of the legislatures are scared, and this is normally in Republican-controlled states. And basically, they don't want cannabis issues to appear on the ballot. It is generally a pretty liberal, left-wing Democratic issue. Although it could easily be taken by the libertarian wing of the Republican Party and used as well. But the point being this, they don't want people coming to vote on it because it will drive more left, liberal, Democratic voters to the polls. So they're trying to legalize what they call the Charlotte Web bills, the no THC, minor CBD in it.
Right, yes. Those bills absolutely are a step backwards. These Republicans think that they're actually doing something for their constituents, whereas they're setting them back. The medicine is just needs the THC in it to really work properly. I mean, I'm sure you know that, and everybody knows
it needs
that.
to be taken as a whole. The
Right.
plant needs to be taken as a whole.
Yeah, they do say that a 1-to-1 ratio of CBD to THC is very, very effective. But you know what? It all goes back to being whether and when we can test and do a lot of tests. Again, Israel, Spain, England, the Netherlands, they're way, way ahead of us. And it's all because the testing has not been being able to do it properly. Prohibited, but it is changing. I know that Dr. Sue Sicily has just recently, I believe, gotten some release of security or whatever it is, and they're going to allow her to do some testing. And it's just obviously GW Pharmaceuticals is able to test. So it is it is changing, but we do need to rely on Dr. Raphael Meshulam from Israel, who has been testing and working with marijuana for 60 years.
Exactly. Exactly. The research is there. It needs to be explored further, and there are further tests that need to be done on certain subjects. But historically speaking, cannabis had been used for medical purposes for thousands of years before it got prohibited by the United States in the 1930s.
Absolutely, with the prohibition, and that all went back to hemp and Anslinger and
exactly,
and the paper, the Hearst people and all that. I mean, those people are responsible for hundreds and thousands, if not millions, of deaths. People that could have lived a better life, even though they were sick, more comfortable, or even who knows, maybe by now, we would understand what this oil is doing, and actually hearing that cancers are going into remission and are disappearing, and brain tumors are shrinking, and
diabetes prevented. I mean, look at all these great things.
And of course, I've said it before on the program, Barry, but part of some of the negativeness that people feel about cannabis is that, come on, it can't be curing all that stuff. You're full of crap. You know, how can it be good for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and multiple sclerosis and cognitive impairment? You know, that's what the U.S. government's patent 6630507 says. It's a U.S. patent owned by the government, and they've been denying the medical use of cannabis while they hold that patent after all these years. Why can't we go after them on that level? I mean, people have said it. It's not anything new that people don't know about. But why can't we attack the federal government on that and get them just to change this Schedule I crap ASAP?
Well, that's exactly it. But there are political forces, there are religious forces, there are conservative forces, and corporate forces that prevent that. Real quick, when you look at someplace like Canada, federally, they recognize the right to medical marijuana, to medical cannabis. If you look at Jamaica with their the Dangerous Drug Act that got revised, it's a federal bill, so each parish doesn't get to decide. Again, you can do whatever research you want, and that's really important. And the U.S. on a federal level will have to come up to that. There are some cases that are winding their way in California that I hope eventually the federal courts will address that issue as a fundamental right to medicine, candidly. And then if you go past that, one of the things, though, on the good side that the Schedule I classification is doing at the moment, it keeps out big players like tobacco and alcohol and pharmaceuticals. It lets the little grassroots, the mom and pops, start developing their businesses. Now, eventually, politically speaking, in 2016, California is going to pass rec. And there are many states that have initiatives and ballots on that are going to get passed. And a huge percentage, more than 50% of the population are going to live in states where cannabis use either medically or recreationally is going to be legal. There's going to be a critical mass where the federal government's going to have to address that. And they're going to have to allow for banking services, and they're going to have to allow for research, and they're going to have to allow for business development and for interstate commerce. At some point, that's going to become critical. And whether Obama, at the end of his term, where he feels he has nothing to lose, has it administratively done to reclassify it, or the next president comes in, the next candidate for president comes in on a platform supporting that. That question should be asked. Who supports the legalization of medical as well as recreational cannabis use?
Absolutely. And last week with that debate with the Republicans, and they all were talking about cannabis, and they tried it, and some of them did, and Carly Farina, went off on, drugs and misrepresented.
Well, that's just horrible.
Yeah,
that's just horrible.
She misrepresented. Christie misrepresented that he was implementing that program, and he's really been fighting it, and has said all along that he doesn't believe in it, even the medical, and he came out. I mean, these people are just despicable, and we do have to watch what happens in the election, because all this good work that's been done over the last 8 years, and our industry has opened up. Even though President Obama really has been, excuse the expression, a pussy in many ways, we have made some strides in our industry and in other places as well. I mean,
huge strides, huge strides.
Absolutely. So I mean,
if you would have asked me when I was in college many years ago, would I ever be able to walk into a store where marijuana, without fear of police enforcement or breaking the law, right? And I could pick products off the shelf and packaged and ask questions and the rest of it, I would have laughed at you. But the fact that I did that last October, it was like going to Zion for me. That's how, and the world continued. Buses ran, the planes took off.
That's right.
Cars worked. The society didn't fall apart. Babylon was not upon us.
That great experiment, as they call it, in Colorado did not explode. Even though there are people like Kevin Sabet and Patrick Kennedy who, under the guise of faking people out as well with false information, are still out there trying to knock what's going on. And you can't deny reality, except for these people somehow are able to push their agenda, which is totally deceptive. So,
well, especially the irony of Kennedy, where his family fortune came from. So he's the last one to speak.
Yeah, well, you know what? All these guys are now jumping into the cannabis industry. We have DEA agents who used to helicopter in and chop people's plants down and take them away and burn them and put people in jail, are now opening up security companies in this industry, to watch dispensaries and guard them, and all kinds of advice on how to set up grows with security. These people are hypocrites.
As Peter Tosh would say, who are the real criminals, right?
Well, they've always been, not all of them, of course, but there's always been obviously a faction of criminals in the police departments and DEA, and there was a case, I think, in maybe California just this week about a DEA agent, maybe it was Washington State, taking money, $5,000 for something or whatever. I mean, this shit happens, Okay, Barry, so let's talk about Florida now. You're down there, you're on the ground. Florida is an important state, and we talked about a few minutes ago about elections and what may come. We don't want the good work that we've advanced over the last few years to go away. So you have to be careful of who is going to get in office, but we also need to be careful of these phony CBD only medical cannabis programs. And tell us what is going on in Florida, because I'm very confused.
Yeah, well, again, it's as we know, the state is called Florida. Here's what's going on with cannabis here. There was an amendment that was put on in 2014. Unfortunately, it did not pass. It got 58% support from the voting population. In Florida, because what you're doing is amending the state constitution, you need 60%. So it failed essentially by 1.5 points. And that was drafted by an attorney, John Morgan, and supported very heavily by him. But what they didn't do really is get the word out enough, and Shel Adelstein had come into the state, and he was very much against it. And he spent his tremendous resources fighting against it. So here's where the landscape is. The legislature down here is trying to avoid having a similar situation because it is posed to go back on the ballot in 2016 again with some slightly altered language for the use of the cannabis for particular ailments. So in a bid to try and support those compelling stories of sick children, the legislature has taken up pretty much a Charlotte's Web type bill. So again, like you were saying, CBD, not the entire plant. But they can't implement it. They have problems getting rules together on it. And unfortunately, it's just taking a long, long time. And basically, there's a lot of political maneuvering going on. For cultivators, and New York did the same thing, they're only awarding 5 licenses. So for the entire state of Florida, there are 5 licenses. You had to pay a $60,000 non-refundable fee. They're going to announce supposedly the winners of those licenses in October. And the requirement was, if you were going to bid on it, that you had 30 years experience and you had an inventory of at least 400,000 plants. Doesn't mean growing cannabis, but if you grew palmettos or orchids or something else, you were then qualified. And as you very well know, and I very well know, even if you can grow dandelions, doesn't necessarily mean you can grow quality cannabis.
Absolutely. And of course, we're talking about an edible product here with cannabis, not those other plants that are good for decorations and so forth. This is different. And again, you're right. It's not that easy as people think to grow that weed, but it's not a weed anymore. It's a medicine. It needs to be grown under perfect conditions, no bugs, no pesticides that is wild in the agricultural world.
Or toxins.
Or any of that stuff. And it's very important that they understand that. I think that's a great disservice to, there's not a lot of people that even have 30 years experience growing cannabis. So, to put restrictions like that on. What's the transparency like there? Do you know who the companies are that applied, and have people done backgrounds on those, or is it being hidden from the public?
No, I think at this point you can find out who's made the application and all. So, and that was pretty similar in New York, carried it out the same way as well.
Right. Well, at one point in time, I don't think we knew who they were, but then they did release it. Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, but part of the problem you also have is you have a lot of minority-owned growers who wanted to bid, and effectively they're being shut out because of the way the laws were, especially down in the South here. 30 years ago, they didn't have the ability to own farms, and grow 400,000 plants. That's a long grandfathering time, that 30 years.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's political consideration behind that number.
Well, it makes no sense because it's not based on anything. No one else has done that, and there's 20-something states with medical cannabis at this point. So it's based on nothing except for paranoia. And so, what is the law? Is it a hemp-only bill? I mean, are they allowed to grow Charlotte's Web? And, of course, who knows?
They are allowed to grow Charlotte's Web, and that is essentially it at this point. There is nothing else to be grown.
Well, so I don't even understand that because, who's to say what's Charlotte's Web? Are they only getting it from the Stanley brothers? Is it the strain that the Stanleys, have bred? And what is Charlotte's Web? Is Charlotte's Web basically a hemp plant? There's a lot of controversy going about that. Do you have any knowledge about any of this?
No, I don't know the debates they're having on it, but again, there's just so much wrong going on in the way Florida is handling it at the moment. I'm sure that potentially could be out there as well.
Is having edibles as part of it's oil, right? They want to make oil from these plants, and that's it.
Exactly.
The one.
Exactly. Exactly. And just like New York as well, where there's no smokable, everything has to be oil or edible.
So guess what they do because of that? They don't allow people to use the medicine the way it should be used. There's people that need to smoke it because the onset of feeling the effects are almost instantaneous, and it helps people with nausea and all kinds of other
and to gain appetite
and appetite. So I mean that's totally ridiculous. And what it does, it just keeps the black market going, which in New York, of course, is huge. I mean, you can. Make a phone call and a guy on a bicycle is going to deliver marijuana to you any time of day or night in New York. It's almost,
that's why there's Craigslist, right?
I guess so. I've only been on Craigslist a couple times, but so New York has a lot to work with. I think there's maybe their first dispensary might be opening in January. I think I heard if all goes well.
That is true. They're supposed to offer it in downtown Manhattan now. With the 5, and again, New York is a large state. It's not just New York City. With the 5 cultivators that were awarded in New York State, not one of them is going to have a dispensary in Brooklyn. Now, for 1 second, imagine if Brooklyn, New York, did not have a shop that sold cigarettes or alcohol. How crazy would that be?
Well, again, it's discriminating to people. Were there applications that were applied for to cover Brooklyn, and they just
exactly?
Didn't? I see.
Those did not get awarded the license by the state. Now, eventually, somebody's going to have a dispensary in Brooklyn. That's not a question. The question is, how long is it going to take to provide people who have to get on a bus and ride all the way to either Queens or the Bronx to get their medication? Nobody would accept that for their parent.
No, well, I mean, if you needed your heart medication, you're certainly not going to, drive down to the Bowery to get it from Brooklyn. So it's, again, discrimination. Look, obviously, the obvious fix is somehow, I guess it's the Department of Health, I'm guessing, is running that program in New York. They're going to have to allow one of the 5 licensees to open up in Brooklyn. It makes no sense to have an area like as vast as that not covered. Now, we have the same problem here in our little state of New Mexico, though. We have counties and areas of the state that are underserved, and we're in the process right now of waiting to hear about the winners of the licenses that they haven't not given out in over 5 or 6 years, and some of it has to do with where in their business plan they planned on covering and so forth. So, but we've had that same problem that you're talking about here for the last 6-7 years. So it's something that in growing this industry, so to speak, is going to happen everywhere until it's all really figured out. What else is on your mind today, Barry? Anything else that you'd like to promote other than the marijuana show and your services?
Sure. Well, what I also like to do is not only being an attorney, but I think I've always been very passionate about the cannabis industry since I was in college, and I can't even believe the day is here where I can be a cannabis attorney. But in addition to that, what I like to do is help consulting on a business side, because I've normally also worked as in-house counsel. So I can help on NDAs and contract issues and putting together a great team and reviewing the statutes and legislation and putting proposals together. So I really like the business side of it.
Absolutely. And of course, you know, this industry is creating sub-industries, cottage industries, whatever you want to call them, that hopefully, you know, the little guy can get into and make a nice living.
Well,
you know, we've been...
Well, that's exactly it. It's the ancillary services. It's
Right.
just like the original gold rush. I want to see my clients be like Levi Strauss. They can sell the picks and the shovels and the jeans to all these people. Some of them are going to find gold. Some of them aren't going to find gold. Some of them are going to find happiness and some won't. But they're all going to need these basic essential items.
They need picks, shovels, and overalls for sure. Real quick before we go, you're up on what's happening, the changes in California.
Yes.
How is the new regulations for medical going to roll out? And then how will that be affected with legalization next year?
I gotcha. Basically, they put out some wonderful rules. It was time to take California from the Wild West. That was part of the problem with doing things in California. There are so many legal issues because there's no rules. Now there are going to be rules in place. You know, they're going to require seed to sale tracking. They're going to require certain regulatory requirements to be applied throughout. That's going to give a great amount of legitimacy to the industry. In addition, and I believe they're also creating its own department regarding cannabis as well.
Right.
Which was wise.
Similar to what they do in Colorado. So, well, you know, part of the problem has been, you know, for other states to actually get into the medical industry is that California had no regulations. It really was, you know, I have a hangnail, wink, wink, nod, nod, give me a letter. And, you know, I lived in California for 30 years, so I know, you know, I know about cannabis there. I lived in Florida for 9, and I'll tell you, what the 9 years I was there, cannabis was rare. And for me, and I don't envy you guys there in Florida. You got to fight very, very hard to get a program. But there's a lot of elderly people there. It's no, it's nothing new. And these people, a lot of them. There's Robert Platshorn, who's got the Silver Tour. He's fighting hard. Obviously, you're there fighting hard. So
Hey, Larry, can I tell you something real quick?
Please.
I'll tell you a funny story. So I'm talking to my dad, and eventually I tell my dad, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to become a cannabis attorney from a securities attorney. And he looked at me, and I could see he didn't quite get it at first. And he kind of said, okay. And then a couple of months ago, I was talking to my dad and speaking to him. He was so proud of the fact that I'm advocating for cannabis, and he has some conditions. And in fact, he told me he wouldn't be against trying it. This is the man when I was a kid who would have probably smacked my teeth out if he caught me with a joint, who now I could possibly sit down and smoke one with.
Well, you know,
so the world's come a long way.
It has come a long way. I had the privilege of growing up in a family where my dad, not my bio dad, but the dad that raised me was a jazz musician. And so, you know, I had the opportunity to smoke with my dad for many, many years. We used to smoke hash and play chess. And it was... it's coming around now, and of course, he, you know, being a jazz musician, and he's been gone for 15 years now, 14. He would be laughing his ass off now, knowing that this really turned out to be a medicine, and that it doesn't kill your brain cells; it rebuilds your brain cells, and it doesn't give you lung cancer. It can help you if you have lung cancer, or it actually improves lung function. So it's all just coming to a head now, and it's exciting to be in this industry. Barry, how can people get a hold of you if they need some help?
Real simple. You can always reach out to me. My email is Gainsburg, Gainsburg, @bellsouth.net. Real simple.
Barry, thank you very much. Yes.
Larry, and thank you for what you do.
Oh.
Thank you for advocating. Thank you for being on the front lines. Thank you for giving people a place where they can voice this information and educate people. Thank you.
You know, you're welcome, and that's what Medical Marijuana Radio is all about, getting the word out, helping people who are sick need to know about this medicine. Barry R. Gainsburg, thank you very much, and we'll have you back anytime you have something to say. We'll be right back after these words.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rufus Wainwright.
Some folks like to get away, take a holiday from the neighborhood, hop a flight to Miami Beach or to Hollywood. But I'm taking a Greyhound on the Hudson River line. I'm in a New York state of mind. It was so easy living day by day, out of touch with the rhythm and blues. But now I need a little give and take. The New York Times, the Daily News. It comes down to reality, and that's fine with me, 'cause I've let it slide. Don't care if it's Chinatown or on Riverside. I don't have any reasons, I've left them all behind. I'm in a New York state of mind. I'm just taking that Greyhound down the Hudson River line. I'm in a New York state of mind.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show.
Well, thank you, Barry R. Gainsburg, for giving us a great interview, telling us about New York, Florida, California, Colorado, the medical, not the medical, but the marijuana show. Thanks, Barry. Also want to thank my two radio mentors, both with the initials HS. Thank you for your inspiration. Don't forget my weekly Wednesdays with Larawana radio show that I do, a little 5-minute show for CannaWannaBuy.com, CannaWannaBuy.com for all of your cannabis needs, whether you're a head shop, a dispensary, a patient. Great prices, great products, and fast shipping. If you would like to write the show, it's info@MMJRadio.com, info@MMJRadio.com if you want to be a guest or if you have any suggestions. If you want to hear old shows or if you missed one of the shows, it's MMJRadio.com. My YouTube channel is LSLove88. SoundCloud is MMJ Radio. Spreaker is Time for Hemp, and iHeartRadio is Time for Hemp. CannabisTube.net. Also on Now TV, channel 937, 420radio.org, Pothead Universe Radio, and on the Roku box.
Shalom.
It's the US Weed channel.